Let's return to federal politics now. Joining us from Sydney, political reporter Stephen Jedgetts, who's covering the Malcolm Turnbull campaign, and Matthew Doran, who's following Bill Shorten back in the cold and the gloom of Sydney. Guys, nice to see you both, and I can call you guys. Stephen, let's start with you. Superannuation unrest among coalition backbenchers and also some donors. What's this actually turning into? Is the coalition now seriously considering walking back from this policy?
Virginia, you wouldn't rule it out, but at the moment the Prime Minister's holding very firm. As you mentioned, there is deep uneasiness in the coalition backbench on this issue. That's because the coalition's changes to super, and in particular their move to cap the amount that you can put into super tax-free, disadvantages people who are traditionally rock-solid coalition supporters, namely wealthier Australians in their 50s, 60s, 70s and I guess 80s. As a result of that, some of those people who are also donors are now withholding money from the Liberal Party, and that, of course, is very bad news for some coalition MPs who depend on every dime as it comes in as they fight for their political lives in some of those marginal seats. So that's the background to this. Now, the response from the Prime Minister is to try and head off what we can expect to be some sort of intervention after the election. That's if they win it, of course, by framing this as a question of fairness, saying that the government's making the changes because it wants the system to be fairer, and trying to use that argument to blunt Labor's accusation that it's only there to govern for the wealthy, arguing that if it was governing for the wealthy, then it wouldn't be irritating so many wealthier Australians in this manner. Now, the Finance Minister, Matthias Cormann, was on AM this morning to discuss the issue and to try and hose it down. Let's have a listen to what he had to say earlier today.
I've had, various conversations, of course, with, supporters, and I've explained the changes that we're making and the reasons we're making those changes. And what I'm finding is that as I walk people through it, there's actually a very high level of acceptance of what the government is setting out to do.
Well, that's Matthias Cormann there. Arthur Sittadinous had a slightly different view, and we'll bring that to our viewers a little later on. But Matt Doran, turning to you, I think we're expecting to hear about renewables again today from Bill Shorten.
That's right, it's very much his theme this week, and he'll restate Labor's Labor's target of achieving 50% renewable energy across the country by the year 2030. And the environment is definitely an area which Labor sees as a key election battleground, along with health and education, with which it can launch a full-scale attack on the coalition. They do seem to be the three major policy areas where there is quite a divergence between the two major parties there. So no doubt this won't be the last that we've heard of it from Bill Shorten today, because we still do have a whole 4.5 weeks to go of this campaign.
Well, look, let's have a look at where we've been so far, and we've got some maps drawn up, and we will stay with you, Matt, looking at where Bill Shorten's been to over the last few weeks of the campaign, and then we can compare the two leaders. So, Matt, take us through where Bill Shorten's visited.
Well, it's very much a focus on Queensland and New South Wales, but much of that figure, those 8 visits to electorates in New South Wales, are focused around Western Sydney, or the southwest of Sydney, where there are a number of key marginal electorates there, and also a number of visits up to Queensland. Bill Shorten, like Malcolm Turnbull, has really circumnavigated the country and has visited most pockets of it, apart from Tasmania at this stage, and we are getting some intel that he could be there by the end of the week. The Bill bus, as it's been dubbed, the bus with Bill Shorten's smiling face on the side of it, should be arriving in Burnie this morning on a barge from Melbourne. That wouldn't have been the best voyage across Bass Strait.
On a barge? Seriously, they put it on a barge?
On a barge.
They didn't just put it on the...
Exactly. Well, obviously they couldn't get it on the...
On the ferry, yeah.
I don't know if they could get it on the Spirit of Tasmania, no. So they put it on a barge with the help of some, I think it was the MUA might have helped organise that for them. But yes, earlier this week we were up in Queensland, up in the north of Queensland, yes, where some of those seats are considered fairly safe. They're above that 6% margin, which is where many of the commentators look at it as being under threat. But these are seats that are well and truly in the eyes of, or in the sights of Labor as we head further into this campaign.
Well, Stephen Jedgetts, let's compare where Malcolm Turnbull has been.
Yeah, Malcolm Turnbull, like Bill Shorten, has really focused on the two key states, Queensland and New South Wales. As you can see, he's spent most of his time up in Queensland. 10 electorates have been visited there, then 8 in New South Wales, and also quite a few electorates down in Victoria. What's interesting, though, Virginia, is the change in pace. For the first couple of weeks, the Prime Minister set a truly frenetic pace. In particular, in that second week, he essentially circumnavigated the country, going all the way across to Perth, then up to Darwin, then across to Queensland, and then briefly down to Tasmania before returning to Sydney, all in the space of, I think it was 5 days or perhaps 6 days in total. Since then, he's slowed down a little bit. He seems to be being a little bit more deliberate in his pace. This week, he's spent only really time in New South Wales and in Queensland. So I'm not certain at this stage whether that's because he couldn't keep up the pace or whether they decided just to focus on some of those key states. They know that the only path the government really for them goes through Queensland and New South Wales. If they want to hold on, they have to hold on to those two states. And that might be why Malcolm Turnbull has really hammered down, if you like, on those states over the last week or so.
Stephen, Matt, really good to talk to you. We'll chat again. Thanks so much.